Hey, Goatman here. One of the most requested video guides, if not the most requested one, is all about gear artificing. And whilst I have you, I wouldn't recommend artificing just yet. If you have, that's okay, but artificing is a very pricey process, as well as a commitment to a specific build. And with Endfield being freshly released, builds could change very quickly with new findings now that millions of players can finally get their hands on the game. Regardless, I will explain the system, why you might not want to artifice just yet, and what to focus on if artificing. Like and sub for more Endfield guides, and let's begin. To access artificing, you must progress through Wuling's MSQ and finish the gear artificing quest. Then all you have to do is enter the tab through the gear assembly page. Only golden gear, so the max rarity gear, can be upgraded, and you'll have a selection of all your possible gear upgrade choices on the left. After selecting one, you can see their 3, sometimes 2, stats divided into their own sections. Every stat can be upgraded up to 3 times on any piece, and it is locked to that piece. So if you upgrade a Redeemer Seal, it only upgrades that Redeemer Seal. If we take the gear stats without any upgrades as the baseline, then artificing enhances the baseline by 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 depending on the upgrade amount. So if I have a Tideful chest with 87 intellect, multiplying it by 1.3 will let us get a flat intellect of 113. But to artifice, we first need catalysts, and these are bought from the Wuling stock redistribution. We have a permanent one-time stock as well as a resetting but more expensive stock. The real problem right now is Wuling is barely explored, and with future regions, outposts, and thus stock build generation and redistribution points, we can expect to have a better experience later on. Every new region may have a slow start to gearing though. Once you've acquired your catalysts, you only need one thing left. When you want to upgrade a stat on your gear, you need to sacrifice another poor little gear piece, as if you're fusing it to your cooler one, but this gear piece must fulfill 3 conditions. First, it must be of the same gear type as your piece, so if I want to upgrade my Tideful light armor, I need to sacrifice an armor gear piece. The second condition is that the piece needs the stat that I want to upgrade. If I want to upgrade intellect on my Tideful armor, I therefore would need another armor piece that has intellect. Now, the third condition is that that stat on my sacrificial piece cannot be lower than the base stat on my piece I want to upgrade. So this Tideful armor piece's intellect stat cannot be upgraded by Frontier's armor, for example, because that has an intellect of 58. It needs another armor piece with 87 intellect. By the way, if I upgrade my piece, it can still use 87 stat pieces as upgrades because it is dependent on the unupgraded stat amount for the check. So does this all mean I spam Tideful light armor and use only that to upgrade? No. Artificing is RNG. There is, however, a pity if you're really unlucky that will guarantee a success on your next artifice, and this gets bigger depending on the artificing level. I don't know the odds until some mad person compiles people's artificing rates, but one thing can be sure. There is a way to increase your chances and artifice correctly. We know we need a corresponding gear piece, stat, and it needs to be at least the same stat amount at level 0 upgrades. However, not all gear is built equally, and so some pieces will have higher stat amounts than yours even if unupgraded. Not only that, the second attribute on gear will always be lower than if it were the first attribute on another piece of gear. And why is that important? Well, when matching the stat amount on your desired upgraded piece and your sacrificial piece, you get a normal artificing chance. But if the stat is higher on your sacrificial piece than your unupgraded stat amount, then we get a good match, and this increases the RNG chances. For a quick example, if I want to upgrade my Tideful light armor strength, which has a base stat of 58, then any armor piece that has its first attribute as strength will always result as a good match, because it naturally has a stat of 87. And with kits it's even easier, because we have non-set gold pieces in the Redeemer pieces, and these are always a much higher main stat than any other kit due to them having a single stat and lack of gear set. And by the way, this also works for other stats like the main stat on these kits, where Redeemer Seal's ult gain efficiency is higher than Zeronite Power Core's ult gain efficiency, giving us that boost in chances. So we can leverage all of this to find exactly the pieces we want to use to upgrade our gear. Instead of calling out every single gear piece in the game, I'm just going to show stuff on the screen. If you want to upgrade agility on your pieces, here are the armor and gloves needed, and remember these would only be a good match if you're upgrading agility as a second stat on your piece. And if upgrading agility on kits, it can be main or secondary stat, as Redeemer Tag T1 has a higher base agility. For intellect, here is the same thing, with Redeemer Seal being your non-set intellect piece for the best kit chances. Here it is for strength, Redeemer Tag is the default for strength kits. And finally, here it is for will, with this time Redeemer Seal T1 as the kit upgrade option. And because the Redeemer line also has higher base main stats than any other piece, Redeemer Seal can be used for any alt gain kit as a good match upgrade. Redeemer Seal T1 with treatment bonus, Redeemer Tag for final damage reduction, and Redeemer Tag T1 for combo skill damage. Here it all is in a nice infographic that doesn't require you to choose between 50 different pieces. I made the decision for you. But should you artifice at all? I had the warning in the intro, but here's another one. Theory crafting is ever changing, we haven't got our proper Umbral Monument endgame yet, and that might not even be that hard based on CBD2. If it is tricky, maybe assumptions and theory crafting will change yet again. So investing all of those stock builds and catalysts, all those gear pieces, to artifice a gear piece that might not actually end up being best, it's a scary thing and a pretty hefty investment loss. Take for example Lei. She has 3 different builds floating around, all with different use cases. Granny Schnick can run 4 different gear sets, but there are optimized runs running him as a full arts intensity alt gain support bot. Some more supportive characters can build for damage, but in the future it might be troll if characters creep them hard in damage, which would maybe make us move these supports to other pieces. Gear can change, so it's just a warning. But now, let's see what we would prioritize. Your priorities should first be on the main carry of your composition. Even in multi-DPS compositions like physical and electric, they still have a main carry, i.e. Endmin or Japan or RV Wenner. So find that build that you're happy with, and then you can start if you're okay with the warning from before. Your 2 priorities on the DPS gearing are the main attribute of your DPS and the main stat of a piece. If your DPS is an agility main attribute character wearing Swordmaster attack fists, then you'd naturally focus on agility over strength here. And when upgrading your main attribute, you'd focus on your chest and gloves first as they have the highest amount of that stat. Upgrading your secondary attribute, especially on a weaker piece like a kit, has insanely low priority as it will barely increase your damage. You're multiplying a number by a small amount that is then multiplied by 0.2% to give you more of an already diluted attribute attack percent bonus. At least your main attribute has okay scaling. So your main attribute is something you can upgrade, but it can be a lower priority than some main stats. Take for example physical damage from Swordmaster Flint. Despite dilution of damage percent, upgrading this by 1.1 can be more worth than upgrading your main attribute. This can be the case even more so if your character focuses most of the damage profile into a certain ability. Take for example RV Wenner, whose damage majority is made up of battle skill damage. Upgrading battle skill damage percent is the top priority for damage in a simulation. But some characters also want specific alt gain breakpoints in certain setups, and if you know what you're doing with them, you'll know these values. In that case, upgrading alt gain until you hit said breakpoint will be the most important thing you can do for your build, as it is how your whole alt-based build functions. Though this also means that you should avoid wasting artificing catalysts on alt gain pieces when it is not necessary. Sometimes we take a piece that has alt gain to achieve a certain clean rotation, but going past that stat might not do anything. So overall, focus on alt gain if needed to hit a breakpoint mentioned in your build, along with high stats that correspond to your DPS's main attribute, and also alongside any universal main stats that can buff your whole kit, or specific main stats that mega buff the most important part of your kit. Usually the main stats will be stronger. Stat lines with your DPS's secondary attribute are the lowest priority as they give minimal increases to your damage, especially for how expensive this process is. And because of the scaling of upgrading your DPS's secondary attribute stat lines, if you're happy with your team, you could then focus on leveling core gear parts of your supports instead. Say for example you need X amount of energy on your support to ult every rotation that you have mathed out. Focusing on that is much more beneficial to your team. But also stats on some units are worth upgrading too, like secondary attribute on characters like Shaihi that would increase her intellect to amp conversion on her ultimate. But anyways, going from 0 artificing on all gear to max artificing on all gear is a substantial boost to your damage dealer. For example, in one sim, maxing them out provided a 20% increase to the damage of my DPS, with perfectly matching builds having an even better theoretical boost. Just remember it is very costly, and most of this increase is from the best stats being upgraded, so don't worry about maxing out everything. Also remember, multi-DPS compositions will see less of a direct increase in overall damage from artificing due to having 3 other members helping out at the same time. And so that should be all on artificing. Like and sub and share to others that might need this info, and thanks for watching. Let me know what you want to see next, and have a guoba day.